Hi, everybody. This is Joe Lynn Turner, and you're listening to Sydney Taylor and Metal from the Inside.
You've tuned in to the most crazy rocking metal podcast on the air. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metal from the Inside.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Metal from the Inside podcast. I'm here with, quite honestly, in my opinion, one of the greatest rock vocalists out there, Mr. Joe Lynn Turner. You guys know him, of course, from his work with Rainbow, Deep Purple, Yngwie, of course, and of course his solo career. So, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It is an honor to have you.
It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it, Sydney. Thank you.
Yeah, so kind of starting out, just how have you been? Because I know that 2020 was just a wild year. It was a whirlwind that really hit the music industry, especially very hard. So I know that you have been staying, though, very positive, keeping up with you on social media and things that you share. You're pretty positive. You have a really great outlook on everything. So just how have you been in the wildness of the last year or so?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do have a positive attitude for many reasons. We'll get into that later. But I'm just getting over COVID.
Oh, wow.
So I managed to stay away from it for over a year, I guess, or close to a year, because say February or something like that, to this February. And I guess it's been about 10, 11 days now, and I feel fine. No problem. Thankfully, I believe I had a mild case of it. It wasn't so much as they call a heavier load, but I'm feeling good except for a little bit of sniffle, and that's it. And I'm on my way to recovery. So I thought I was going to get away with it, but yeah, we weren't in so much of a lockdown here, so I was going out, restaurants, bars, whatever, and eventually you're going to pick it up. But I'm kind of glad I do because of the antibodies now.
Yeah, I had no idea that you had that. I didn't hear about that. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing well and that it wasn't too bad because, of course, the cases definitely vary of the severity. So I'm glad to hear that that's good at least. So I know that I wanted to touch on too. I believe you had a show because I know you were mentioning, things obviously are different kind of between here where I'm in the US, and I know you spent some time over in Eastern Europe as well, but I believe you did have a show back in November, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, one show that had been postponed, from March, I think. And finally, they opened up 50% capacity. So it was with an orchestra here at the Presidential Palace, and which is a great place to play and a great orchestra. So it was fun to get back on stage. I have to admit, it was a little awkward at first because, it's kind of like you're out of it for so long. You start to go, I still have my legs, so to speak, but it's like riding a bike. Once you get out there on the stage and the lights hit, music starts, it all comes back to you.
It's weird, kind of going in between. I mean, like for me, I'm also a big concert goer. So it's been weird to have, like 9 months. I mean, at this point, almost a year of no shows. It's like abnormal, you know what I mean? So I can't imagine what it's like for you, performer. You spend so much of your time during the year out on the road. It must be weird to have so much time at home.
Well, truth be told, I guess around February, March, we were looking forward to all these shows that we had booked and going into spring, summer festivals, everything. And everything was just, knocked on the head. And I'm not the only one, obviously. But what I'm saying is it's a big disappointment artistically, financially, and in every way. You want to get out there and play. And so it's kind of weird being sheltered in the house and all of these restrictions and things like that. But I made great use of the time by being creative. I read a lot. I must have read over 100 books, which I used to be a big reader with an English literature background. And, I hadn't been doing it. And then finally I had time to actually read books and also write songs, lots of songs. So that kind of kept you in line to do that. So that was the positive side of it, I think, And also you start to realize relationships, especially with your significant other. I know a lot of people have domestic problems, but we kind of got on better than ever and spent some time that we never got to spend together. So that was good.
Yeah, you're not really spending typically all the time together. So yeah, people getting stuck in the house. It's like, with your family, you're like, oh my
Right.
God, I got to get out of here. But I'm glad to hear that you were doing well. And something that I wanted to touch on too was I know that you are a very, spiritual person, which I was so happy to hear about that. Cause I mean, I really relate to that kind of whole ideal and, kind of staying spiritually positive and everything like that. So, in the midst of not only kind of dealing with things like the lockdown and everything like that, but, you mentioned creatively, how do you think that role has really, played in your own life, kind of regards to your spirituality and everything like that?
Well, I mean, current situations, geopolitically and so on. I mean, there's really a battle for your soul out there. And I think the beast has risen its ugly head. And I mean, it's all biblical. And I'm not saying I'm hardcore Bible, although I studied the Bible with the Jesuits and things like that. I've got a pretty extensive background in like a lot of those things, but I digress. What I mean is, for example, this is an invisible enemy, this pandemic. Was it released purposely, et cetera, which they're finding out it pretty much was. I mean, this is evil. This is pure evil. And when something like that happens, you have to reflect on what is going on in the state of the world, and you start to look inside yourself about your own strength, spiritual strength, and start to question other people's spiritual strength, because you can actually see it either evolving into greater things or actually declining. And it brings everything, I think, under the light, and it shines very brightly. Whereas if it didn't happen, I think a lot of these things would not be known. We call it being awake. And I think the truth, which has been covered for so long, started to come out. And this is a positive thing for the world. There are people who have different truths than me, I'm sure. But my research, it gave me time to research as well when I was home. So I did a lot of extensive research, so I know what I'm talking about. But I've been doing something like this for over 30 years, reading this type of material and finding out what's really going on and questioning everything. Kind of an iconoclast, I stick pins in sacred cows. I want to see, well, what's the truth here? What's really going on? It's a big question here, between good and evil, I think, in the world today. A lot of my current writings is exactly about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I know that you've always been, especially in your solo work, in the last, couple of years, that you've definitely, remained kind of very socially conscious, and you've never really shied away from things that mean a lot to you in your songwriting. So I was going to ask on, maybe how that's also been kind of playing into where you've been working kind of creatively, during all of this.
Things that I was saying 20 years ago are coming true today because I was doing the research then, because I was looking, I was holding the flashlight to it. Now there's a spotlight on it, but because I've always been inquisitive like that, it's just my nature. And of course, we people of my kind, my ilk, we generate, and there's a lot of people in this business, in the rock business, very famous names, by the way. I mean, John Sykes just put out a great record called Dawning of a New Day. That's all about being awake. That's all about what's going on right now. And John is actually on our email list, so we share Bob Daisley, people like that. We're all sort of in a big group, and we share things. And I was really proud to see him come out with that. It's a great track, and he says it the right way. So I let him know that I'm coming out with stuff too to back that up. So yeah, it really affects your creativity. It affects your inclination to write about more heavier subject matters as opposed to Moon, June, Spoon, and about just love relationships. I mean, people will probably be surprised that there's not really one love song on this record, and I'm known for love ballad. I got ballads, but not love ballads.
Right.
One love gone bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a theme that I've obviously seen in your earlier solo records, kind of early 2000s and everything like that, that you've kind of strayed away. And I've always liked that about your songwriting, is the fact that, yeah, obviously in kind of the earlier years, you the time, you did have a lot of love focused songs. It's what the industry was kind of built on, of course. But, I'm a big also like lyrical person. So I really pay attention to lyrics and everything. So I love seeing, the subject matter that you do cover. And I'm happy to hear that, it's inspiring kind of what you're doing right now as well.
Well, I mean, even back in the day with Rainbow, we were doing Can't Happen Here and Freedom Fighter and, all
Yeah.
kinds of things that were social political. And Roger Glover's very, very much into all of that. And Deep Purple still is. In fact, the new album is loaded with this stuff. Gillan is a super intelligent guy. I love the guy. And he's putting things very succinctly. So, I mean, there's a lot of us out there that are inspired by this, because really art is the messenger. It should be a messenger. It shouldn't just be there okay, yeah, you got to have some entertainment. There are bands and artists with just pure entertainment, and then there are others who are taking things very seriously. I mean, what did Dylan come out with? What was it called? Foul Play about JFK.
Yeah.
I mean, that's deep. That's very deep stuff. And there are a lot of artists that actually try to enlighten. I think that's kind of an obligation you should have when you're an artist. You should try to enlighten people as much as you can. Not trying to say, hey, listen to me, I'm right. But if you present it within a format of really great music, no matter what kind it is, whether it's rock, jazz, soul, pop, whatever, you're going to get some listeners, and I think you're going to enlighten people, and that's a good thing.
You look back and it's funny, people are like, this artist wasn't political, or this artist didn't, have these types of themes. And it's like, music has always had those types of themes. You look back, if the frickin' Beatles were, singing about stuff like this.
Sure.
So, it's always been around. It's funny that you mentioned Deep Purple, because I wanted to touch a little bit on that time. And I know that October just marked 30 years since Slaves and Masters, which in my opinion, one of the most underrated records that you did at that time. And I know that it was very, well received with certain fans and obviously your fans. And of course, it's also one of Richie's favorite records. He wrote that you deserved to have some recognition from the Rock Hall, because of that record and your work with Deep Purple. And if I'm correct, it is one of your favorite records that you worked on as well, right?
Absolutely. Look, I think when Slaves and Masters came out, the music was changing. Not only was the music and the genres of music changing, because when you think back, you start to think about grunge coming out, alternative, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a big change in music, but at the same time, when you got a band like Deep Purple, and there have been lineup changes, their lineup changes were more towards the early days, I mean, everything from Rod Evans on down. As Don Airey once put it, we'll have an old how did he put it? An old age home with 100 rooms for all the ex-members. Yeah, very smart, Don did. But anyway, I think the timing was way off, and the hardcore Deep Purple guys wanted Gillan. This was just it. Gillan was it. And although Deep Purple has a history of evolution, I mean, look what they've evolved to today. They're really, you might say, well, they're the same band. Well, they're not Machine Head, but they're Deep Purple. Deep Purple was always sort of mercurial. It was always sort of, you couldn't really just squeeze it in your hand. It was more like water, liquid, which was one of the best things about that band. One minute they were very bluesy, next minute they were very hard rock, and they were this, they were that, which transferred over into Rainbow. So some people called it Deep Rainbow, but how can you not when there were 3 members of Rainbow, 4 members of Purple, And we found it quite amusing because we got some critical acclaim for that record, and some really deep, great recognition. And I just read an article with Roger Glover in it who said he really enjoys this record now. He listened to it again recently and said it's a damn fine record. And the things, for example, that Ian Pace had recently said about it, I was the glue that held Purple together during that interim. Otherwise, it probably never would have gotten back together, because while I was there with Richie, I kind of held him in place. That's what Ian was saying. And besides saying he loved the record, and it was a blast doing it, which it was, and touring it. He just said I performed a very important part of their reunion. And it's funny how people don't realize most of the times that I know what's going on. I knew when Rainbow was going into Purple. I knew when Purple was going back into a reunion. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden it comes out of left field and you're, and not at all. People seem to think, oh, wow, Joe got bounced out or something. No, this was coming. We knew what was happening. I could go into huge record deals for the return of Deep Purple. Okay, I could go into huge money deals. I could go into a lot of reasons why and what. Well, we knew it was happening.
Right.
Everybody was fair about it. So Slaves and Masters, again, in my opinion, stands the test of time. You play that record pound for pound, song for song, great material, great performances. I was very honored to have John Lord still in the band, that I actually got to play with John. Incredible musician and a great guy. We got along fantastically, actually. And I don't know, I just think that you can put this in a time capsule and it's going to still, it's still going to perform for people. So that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, even looking back, I feel that you're kind of touching on like the people refer to it kind of as like a deep rainbow type situation. But I mean, I feel like you and Richie just had kind of just a magic that kind of happened when you guys wrote together. And, we saw that in Rainbow, we saw that in Deep Purple. And of course, it was reminiscent in Deep Purple as well. But again, I just go back to, it was the chemistry that you guys had. Naturally, that sound is going to come out because of the way that you guys wrote together.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love that record. To me, a lot of those early 90s records were so just kind of under the radar. Obviously, like you mentioned, things were happening and it was kind of out of everybody's control. Touching on that as well, I know that, that's been 30 years since Slaves and Masters. We're kind of, almost at 40 years on Straight Between the Eyes and, been out of shape and everything. And you've been singing these songs for decades. You have to sing Street of Dreams, you have to sing Stone Cold. Those are the songs that fans, want to see. But what's interesting, we kind of touched on it earlier, were these orchestral shows that you do. And, after decades of singing these songs, is kind of arranging it different and the different instrumentation, something that really makes, singing Street of Dreams, for the 180th time, in the last 2 years, is it something that makes it fresh for you, in that fact?
Absolutely. Because you're right about that. Once you have a few hits or whatever, you better be prepared to sing them for the rest of your life. So, and you do have to find new enthusiasm, shall we say, to deliver them every night. But when you sing it with the orchestra, I remember the first time I was playing in Japan, because I had done, in fact, we had used orchestras before, Rainbow, and
yeah,
we had done that 36-piece orchestra in Japan, and hidden behind a curtain, and boom, they came out and did Beethoven and the whole thing. And now it became trendy. So anyway, when you first start to sing in front of an orchestra, especially without a rock band, okay, you're thrown off when the violins are doing all the guitar parts, and you're listening to horns do, a bass part or something, and it's kind of strange. And until you fall into it, so to speak, you're flying in the air somehow. You're like, where am I? Because you don't have that strong backbeat or anything like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you start to really rejuvenate and you start to sing it in a little bit different way, and you interpret it similarly because you're hearing different musical lines from the conductor who wrote the piece, and the charts. So it's very interesting. In fact, I remember one night I was listening to this part that he wrote, I guess, for, it was a keyboard there. And it was very interesting, and I actually forgot where I was, like singing it. I've got to come back to that place. So yes, it does make a difference, and it's exciting again.
Right.
Plus, you get to do, especially for the music that I was involved in, it was very orchestral. Whether it was Love Conquers All from Slaves and Masters, which was beautiful. John Lord actually wrote all those string parts and everything. Beautiful stuff. And it's all reproduced wonderfully by the orchestra. Or you take Spotlight Kid, with an orchestra, it's just rocking, And now I play with rock bands inside sometimes, the orchestra. And that's a whole nother feeling, because now you've got both things going on. So it's a lot of fun, I think, and it's very rewarding. For example, I played Vienna Opera House. What rock and roll guy gets to play Vienna Opera House?
Yeah.
I was like, look, Mom, I made it, I'm at the Opera House. And let me tell you, it's centuries old. The walkway to the stage is about that big, and so on and so forth. And you're just in this incredible classical type of atmosphere, and there's a full audience, balconies are jammed, everything. It was just amazing. So there's some really fantastic things about that, transferring the music to that. Very good. Keeping it fresh.
I'm thinking like that's what it must have to be like for you. But I'm also thinking in the same sense of it also still must be a thrill for you, to sing these songs and, have fans kind of no matter what, you play the intro to Street of Dreams and everybody just loses their mind, and I'm sure that, to have the fans still feel that way, you know, coming out must still be even very rewarding for you.
It's incredible because they get older, and we all get older. We don't get younger. And they teach their children, and the kids come to the shows, whether it's a rock show, you know, she's on Daddy's shoulders, or whether it's, you know, in the audience of an orchestral show or whatever, and they know the music.
Yeah.
And this is the continuation of a legacy of generations. And not all music and not all bands get that, because, you know, sometimes you just got that one hit wonder, or you have that, it's for a certain time period. But this music lasts through the ages. So yeah, it's a fantastic rush that old and young are both involved, and it makes that music timely and fresh again. I don't know another word for it, but
Yeah.
it reinvents itself all the time. And I'm very fortunate that way, that I was part of that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a direct product of that. I grew up, you know, my dad, when I was younger, you know, put on Been Out of Shape, put on Straight Between the Eyes, you know, that was like the soundtrack to my childhood. So you're looking at somebody, right now who's a direct, you know, product of, you know, kind of being shown to it, you know, as the years go by. So, you know, I love that. And I think that, you know, it's so important that, you know, you're still out there doing it and singing these songs, because again, it means a lot for even people like me, and with other artists too, you know, who I wasn't around in 1983 and I couldn't, you know, see these people do it, you know, so I love that you're still out there doing it, because it's great for the fans.
That gets in your blood, Sydney. You know, that really gets in your blood when you're growing up with it, especially. I have plenty of people that I know the same thing, and that is kind of your base. You know, becomes your base for listening to music. And I notice people who do listen to that actually have a different twist on what they choose. They're very eclectic. I mean, they could go from Rainbow to Bramstein, you know, but it's a certain thing, you know, that they generate towards. And again, it makes it timeless. It makes it classical and timeless. But you can't get away from it much, you know, because like I always said, well, what am I going to do, you know, when this album comes out, and it's a different way of writing and thinking now. I'm going to pull up I Surrender for an encore, you know.
Right.
I guess. You know?
Yeah.
Street of Dreams, you know, and it's kind of like the mafia, you know. You try to get out, but they pull you back in. They want to hear it, you know. They came to hear certain things, and it's funny because they want you to change, and an artist must change and evolve, but at the same time, they don't want you to change. So it's difficult to get out of your own footprints, you know, sometimes.
Right.
It's a dichotomy, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it must be difficult, I guess, you know, you're choosing set lists, and it's like, you know, want to pull something from like Rescue You, or even kind of like later from that, you know, you're like, God damn, I have to put in Street of Dreams. Like, they're going to be so mad if I don't sing it. Which again, obviously there's pros and cons to
That's right.
One last thing about, you know, Rainbow, we'll kind of scoot away from the topic after this, but I mean, I'm not going to go too crazy in depth on it, because I know you've described it many, many times, you know, kind of the almost reunion that happened a couple years ago. Just kind of maybe like closing on that a little bit, you know, is it something that reunion, something that maybe a part of you hopes one day will still happen, or is it something that you think, you know, the door is kind of officially shut for good?
It's kind of like an ex-wife, Sydney. This is definitely shut.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, no hard feelings or anything like that at all. It's just that been there, done that, you know, got the t-shirt literally. And there was an attempt way back when it almost happened. And I mean, that's for sure. That almost happened. And I have the emails to prove it. And okay, it didn't work out. He went a different way, or she went a different way. No problem. But at this point, no, I don't think there's any chance of that ever happening. I don't feel it in my heart. That's, you know, it's like I said, next wife. You know, I'm not in love anymore. You know, I'm moving on. So that's where that lies. And good luck to whatever he does, you know. Good luck.
So kind of touching on, again, your fan base, you have a really big fan base in Europe. And I know, again, you spent some time in Eastern Europe during the year and everything like that. But, you know, it's crazy. I look on the comments of, you know, the videos of the Rainbow videos and Deep Purple and your solo stuff on YouTube, and majority of the comments, like 80% of the comments are, in, other languages and German and all this stuff. And it's crazy. So, I mean, for you, is this something that you realize, this kind of major fan base that you have in Europe, during your years of touring? I know Yngwie was, a big thing for you guys. You went over there. Or is this something you kind of, in visiting and performing, that you kind of were like, oh my God, I have a huge following here?
Yeah, well, before the peace concert, we went and did 22 shows when it was still the Soviet Union in Russia. It was Soviet Union, it wasn't Russia.
Yeah.
And what an experience that was, because we spent like in the month of February, so it was very cold, and on top of everything, Dr. Zhivago, totally, And 22 shows, 11 in Moskva and 11 in Leningrad. And we had over 20,000 people a night, okay? Every night, every single night. As a matter of fact, I went back for a show there to see Aerosmith in the same hall that I had played, and they didn't even fill it out. And we had filled that hall out, 11 nights, and then 11 more nights in Leningrad. And of course, the Live in Leningrad album, LP, was released, in 89, I think, or something like that. But anyway, it did some chart action. It was in the top 200, 128 in Billboard. And I mean, that's rare for a live album. So I really gained a lot of fan base being there. First of all, they're very honored that you come to the country, especially in the situation they're in. They're very respectful of that. And once they're your fans, they're always your fans, even as they grow older. In other words, it's not typically like, how shall I say, finicky or trendy or fad-like. It's like, whereas in the States, and I'm not knocking anything, but the States has a lot more, one day this is in, the next day this is in, the next day this is the soup du jour, and so on. Whereas there, once you're the fan, they can like all kinds of music and stretch out, but they're always loyal to. They're always loyal. And not every band, you'd be surprised, not every band has that kind of following over there. For example, Journey, an amazing band, friends of mine, an amazing band. And they didn't ever heard of them over there, I mean, now, obviously, they know what Journey is, but
right.
They weren't like when Purple cemented it, or when we went over and cemented that fan base, that's why they have an incredible fan base throughout Europe, because Purple was obviously a European band coming out of the UK and just gaining all these legions of fans. Like Uriah Heep, they're still going strong, Mick is still going strong with that. God bless them. And they play everywhere. And then there's certain bands that you probably never even heard of that are huge.
It's crazy.
Huge. Yeah, they make a life just on that alone, on that market. You got to go. Somebody once told me, go where you're loved and respected. Yeah. Why waste your time anywhere else? It's kind of true.
Now, would you say that definitely is like the biggest difference between the American and European audiences, the fact, and something that I've definitely seen through many different artists and over the years as music has evolved. But yeah, is it the fact that we're just so like trendy and fad focused over here, you think that?
Well, look, I'm not saying everyone.
Right.
And I'm not saying all the time. I'm saying, but the States, it's a big place. Yeah. And although Russia's a very big place, it's a big place, but there is more trend to it. There is more. I mean, everybody over there in Russia now is doing hip hop. Yeah. Come on, it's rap and hip hop. So, I mean, the influence comes. The United States is a main influence. So that's not the point. And it doesn't mean that I'm negating it in any way. I don't mean to offend anyone. But yes, it's true, because people will go, well, now this is in, and that's what I'm going to be, and now that's in, and then they might sort of say, well, I used to love that band when I was a kid, but I kind of grew out of it or something. Whereas these people don't grow out of it; they grow more into it. They collect it. They've got all LPs over here in collections, not CDs. Yeah. It's deeper in that sense, I think. It has a deeper sense. Germany too. I mean, Germany was it still is a huge market. It was like the home of rock. I mean, we used to play Germany twice in one tour.
Yeah. So it's even like we were talking about with Slaves and Masters too. I mean, like just the timing, you look back, grunge came in and everybody was like, oh, for, the melodic rock, all that we're past it, we're moving on to this, and then it eventually moved on to something else.
Uh,
But you never saw that in even South America too. You know, you look at South America, you look at Germany.
correct.
You know,
That's
Iron
right.
Maiden, yeah, Iron Maiden plays in South America. They play in, you know, Brazil, and it's, you know, 100,000 people, and it's not like that in the
Right.
States. It's bizarre. But
You're
yeah, I
right.
mean,
That's
you
right.
have a huge fan base over there, and it's so great, you know, seeing you still play to, you know, huge crowds. And I wanted to kind of move on to a little bit of what you're doing now, and, you know, kind of we've touched on the past, you know, kind of want to bring back to what you're doing kind of solo wise. But first I wanted to address obviously the happenings, a situation revolving Sunstorm. I know that you kind of released a couple statements on Facebook that you were stepping away from the group, and that it was a really big decision for you to go ahead and do that. You know, you thought about it for a while. And obviously, Frontiers just announced that statement
Mhm.
regarding Ronnie. And I know you've posted some, you know, Facebook statements, but I kind of wanted to get your opinion, and, you know, have you tell a little bit about just how that all kind of happened.
Well, I'll gloss over it. First of all, Sunstorm was never a group, was never a band. It was a vehicle for me to showcase my songs that didn't come out on solo albums like Rescue You or anything like that, because Perugino had found an old tape that a journalist gave him. And that's how things get around. And he loved all the songs. So he said, look, why don't you do a collection of songs like this? We'll salt and pepper it with other great writers like Jim Pitterick, a good friend of mine from Survivor, and great writer, and some other notables out of Sweden and so on. And we'll make like this AOR classic rock records. Great. So we did that, basically 3 albums. And then it kind of started to turn into something else, more like, I hate to say the word factory, but it was an in-house deal where, you know, they were started taking over all creative control, and it was kind of tight-fisted. And it was losing its direction and losing its purpose. So, you know, I mean, I did 2 records like that, and I'm not going to get into any particular struggles with creativity or struggles with dodgy business deals or any of that kind of stuff. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But after, you know, that, I just said, look, this is not benefiting me. This is not validating me in any way anymore. So I'm going to step away from the project. It's not a band. It's not a group. It's not like a revolving door where you could have different people come in. And I never claim I own the name. They own the name, Sunstorm. No doubt about that. But out of simple respect, morality, and integrity, I would think if they were going to do something with someone else, they would call it a different name. Fine. You know, I mean, personally, I didn't even start this hoopla. The fans went crazy. They're still going crazy. I mean, I'm so thankful for their support and love, but they have it right. This was suited for me. This was supposed to be my project. And if you walk away from it, you should leave it alone. Start something else. But maybe because it was so successful, they wanted to sort of get something on the monetizing side, or I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a personal thing. I don't know what's going on there.
Right.
And I really don't care. I think it was a wrong thing to do for them business-wise. And I think it was a wrong thing for them to do respectful-wise. So that being said, you know, I mean, I have no problem with whatever. But I think the fans have spoken on this one. That's who should speak. It's really all about the fans. I'm always been so thankful for my fans because my fans are mighty and loyal and supportive, you know, and I'm always amazed that they come to defend me no matter what it is. They come to defend me. And I don't feel I ever have to really strike out at anything because I know they're going to take care of it. It's like you got a gang, you know, and they're just going to step up and say, what did you say? Excuse me? Well, let me tell you this. And boy, look out, because some of them can really hurt people.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is. It's I think it was just a bad business decision on their part.
Yeah, you'd think that, like, it's especially in this like era, you know, kind of starting a new project, especially on a label like that, isn't too difficult. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that hard to like start a new name, start a new, you know, project, new whatever. You know, obviously, if you want to like look back what the industry was like 30 years ago, that's a little bit difficult. But nowadays, I don't really feel that it's that hard to kind of reform that. So I totally know what you're saying. I love your fans because they really gravitate towards a lot of the other things that you did that kind of went under the radar, like, Mother's Army, which such a great project. You did 3 records with some amazing musicians. And again, another thing that I think was just a product of the time and just the way the industry was working. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about that too, because I know that fans love that. You see, again, I was looking at videos on YouTube and people are just love those records. So speak a little bit about that too, and kind of what that project was like, and just, how it feels to have a lot of these diehard fans, love those records so much.
Well, first of all, I'm eternally thankful that they do. But Mother's Army was the most underrated, undiscovered band in the universe. We made 3 incredible records, and they were diverse. And talk about a socially conscious band, talk about it, speaking about subjects, everything from love to paranormal activity. I mean, we had one called Dead on Arrival, where it was an out-of-body experience. We spoke about just about everything. We had Planet Earth, the second album, that was a complete concept album, sort of Pink Floyd type, and from beginning to end, conceptually. An incredible talent. I mean, you got to look at Bob Daisley. Bob Daisley was the man behind Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Behind Rainbow. I mean, he was, come on, the bands that he's been in, Widowmaker. Bob is an incredible writer, player, gentleman. He's an amazing guy. We're still friends to this day. Almost every other day we email about what's going on in the world. He's part of the email with John Sykes and everyone. You had Carmine for a while and 2 albums, Carmine Apiece. Jeff Watson from Night Ranger, an amazing guitar player. I don't think he's played ever better than on Mother's Army. He stretched out beyond Hendrix. This guy was just unstoppable. If you listen to these records, you won't believe it, because I don't think Night Ranger did him any justice at all. He played great, him and Brad, but he shines on this record. So you put all that together, and finally Edel released a 3-box set of Mother's Army, and Fire on the Moon was our last one.
Right.
And we got a lot heavier, a lot more raw, and a lot more in your face about what was going on. And we had some other songs in the can, and we've always kicked around the idea that maybe someday we would do something, even for ourselves, because this band was a labor of love for the musicians. I might add that we had Ainsley Dunbar come in on Fire on the Moon album.
Yes.
So you're talking about some very class musicianship here, and it shows. And yes, the fans are the ones who love it are rabid about it, and rightfully so, because it's some of the greatest music that nobody's ever heard.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, Sydney, you have to suffer these things in your career. It's kind of like a prodigy child who was never really recognized as a prodigy. People just keep missing the mark, or exactly what happened was all of the alternative had come in, and they just didn't want to hear anything like this. Yet we weren't just classic rock. We were really something else. If you listen to songs like Maru Atoll, you might say, what the hell is that? Well, that's an island, a French-owned island in the Pacific that they were doing. They were bombing, nuclear bombing, doing testing. And everybody was just dying of cancer and everything else. I mean, we would write about these subjects, and it's an incredibly heavy song. It goes beyond just music. It goes really into literature and to news and evolution of the world. And, Mother's Army was a very special group of guys in thought and in heart. So anyone that's not familiar with it, I would really say run out, and you can still buy it. Just go on Amazon or wherever, and you can still get the 3-box set from Edel, I'm pretty sure. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah,
it runs.
It's like, in a way, different than I think anything that you've ever done, musically. I mean, it was a little bit, I feel like, different than a lot of the melodic, just rock things that you were doing at that time. You really kind of branched out. And even to this day, I mean, I really think it's one of, just the most unique things that you've ever done, in your career.
Absolutely is. There's no doubt about it. This was a very special super group.
Yeah.
Hate the word super group, but we were a super group. And I think the heartbreaking thing about it was that we knew it. We knew that we had something very special there, and it just went pretty much unnoticed because of fashion and fad, times changing mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget, I was living in New York City, downtown in the East Village, and when I heard Nirvana for the first time, I went, there goes the music, there goes our music, there it goes. You know, it's still around, but it's not like it was, you know. Whereas classic rock is called classic for a reason, because it's class.
Yeah, it's something that I wrote my senior thesis on a lot of these topics, and it's something that, I mean, rock to this day is used for pretty much everything. It's used for advertisements, it's used for all this stuff, and it's not in the mainstream anymore, which is just like so unfortunate. And it's crazy how society does that. They just take all these they deem it's cool for some other stuff, but not for, you know, main listening purposes.
It's a disposable society.
Yeah.
Really, we're living in a kind of a McDonald's world, you know. Eat it here, throw the wrapper away, you know, and it'll be the same, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you're not talking Mozart and Beethoven here. You're talking, you know, just a fast food world. People take it, they digest, oh, I'm done with that, on to the next, you know, something like that. So it's good to keep up with the times. I mean, you do have to change, otherwise you stagnate. I think it was Woody Allen who said, you know, if I don't, if I relax too much, I tend to rot. You know, you just lose all of your joie de vivre. Yeah. And so you've got to keep moving, kind of like a shark in the water. But, you know, Tarantino's movies, he always uses classic rock stuff. You know, so he's a big fan of it. And so I mean, you know, look, thank God I'll always have a career, you know, I mean, until I really throw in the towel. But, and so will many of us because of that. But that's because the music is for real. And it was built on rock solid foundation.
Yeah, it stands the test of time, and we're seeing that, you know, as remembered, you know, the Beatles and Led Zeppelin are remembered 50 years later, and, you know, a lot of the stuff that's coming out now, I mean, I will be surprised if people remember it in 2 years. So
I totally agree, with no offense to anyone and respect to everyone, but I think it comes and goes just like wiping your feet on a rug, you know. And I mean, maybe they'll look back in the time capsule, like I said, and Slaves and Masters will be there, and you know, stuff like that, Odyssey and what have you. And that would be a great legacy to have for anyone.
So touching a little bit too, I want to get into what you're working on now, which of course I know you've been working on the solo record, and I'm not sure how much you can say about it or how little you can say, but I know you've been working with Peter from Pain and Hypocrisy. I know you've described that in a couple interviews that you've done over the years. So if you can, you know, can you say anything about what working with Peter has been like, or about this project?
Like I can say that I don't want to talk too much about it because it is a project we're trying to keep under wraps until we release it, and keep some mystery about it, you know, only because nowadays most mystery is gone. What happened was that I had played a gig for Tommy, his brother, he's a big fan of mine, and in Sweden, and we got to be friends, Peter and I. And driving back to the train and going back down to Stockholm, he gave me a cassette with a track on it that he wasn't using, and he said, "Why don't you write something to this?" I said, "Okay." So about a month later, I sent something back, and he just went, "Whoa, really?" And I went, "Yeah, I think this is good stuff." And it's going to be a lead-off track that we have today. It's incredible. So anyway, we said, let's do something. So meanwhile, he's touring like crazy with 2 bands. I'm touring. We were writing a track here and so on and so forth. So finally got up to Borlänge and again, and we got in the studio and the chemistry was unbelievable. We just wrote like 2 or 3 tracks in 2 days. I mean, soup to nuts. Just as you're going to hear them on the record is the way we did them. So we knew we had something. It's different. I think it's exciting. It's different. It doesn't sound like anyone else. I really mean that, just because of the input where Peter comes from as a writer, artist, and producer. And of course, it's still melodic because I make sure that I've got those melodies and choruses. It's not a typical, when I say heavier or darker, mostly because of the times we live in now is all the subjects. And we wrote it. So it is a real piece of art in the sense of the word, because art should always be a reflection of its time. You know, this is exactly what all great art has been through the ages. So all I can say is that we're very excited about it. We think people are going to absolutely love it because it has all of the building blocks It's got a bit of industrial metal. It's got a bit of classic rock vocals. It's got subject matter. It's darker. It's deeper. It's broader. So,
Right.
you know, we think it's going to raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it whenever it does,
Yeah.
you know, be released and everything. I know I actually really love the fact that you said, you know, the thing about mystery and everything like that. You know, obviously rock just used to have this whole like mystique about it. You know, you didn't know everything that was happening, and obviously, you know, with technology, that mystery and mystique has kind of drifted away. So I love that approach. A lot of people don't really do that. It's always, you know, the second that they're working on something, this is going to be released and, you know, you'll hear it this date. So I think that that's awesome that you're kind of on that route.
That's right. Well, it's old school, really, in a way, because the Beatles, you really didn't hear anything from them until they were ready to release something, for example. And why should they? Why should you put something out before the cake is baked? You know, I mean, why, you know, we don't have to explain it. We don't have to give you a snippet or anything. What we probably will do is really say we release something a single in April or May. When I say a single, a track, you know, let's release it then, because we don't know what this year is going to be like for touring, for anything. We really don't know if concerts are coming back. And we talked the other day about it and said, look, we're not going to miss out on a touring schedule with a great album like this that I really believe is perfect for festivals and what people are going to want to see and hear. So let's release something, say May, let's release something June, you know, let's do it piece by piece till finally we say, okay, here's the album. We got promoters interested. We got fans interested. Let's go out there and actually play it in front of them live. So we're just trying to be smart about it. We're not trying to be snub about it or anything. It's just smart, because who knows when we're going to get back on stage. And really, an artist's calling card is the record. Yeah. That's your calling card. Hi, here's our sound. This is the interest. Come and see it. Come and hear it, you know, for yourself. Otherwise, nobody buys CDs anymore or anything. I mean, even merch is being taken away. I mean, look at Marco from Nightwish. He just left, and his statement was purely about not being validated anymore. He felt he wasn't being validated. And this is a very successful band, but he wasn't being validated because big corporations were taking over the sales, the concerts, of how you can do this, the merchandise. He just said, what am I doing? What is this? What is happening here? You know, it's getting overrun. And what my opinion is that the only people that can stop this are the fans and the bands. That's it. If we just stand up and say, you know what, enough with all this Live Nation junk, and enough with all this, and enough for $500 a ticket, and by the time you buy a beer or something, you're broke, you take your girlfriend to a concert. So we have to make a stand. We have to say, we're sick of this stuff. We're done. We want to hear our music. You don't have to be making so much money prostituting us the way you're doing. And that's sad. It's really sad. You know? Yeah, it's either, like you said, the bands have to say you're not taking it anymore, and it's also the fans have to say, you know, we're not going to go anymore. If you know, if nobody buys a ticket, nobody, you know, the promoters are going to be like, you know what, no, we're not going to do this. We control it, really. Except we forgot that we're the reason why it's there. Right. It doesn't exist without us. Yeah. You know? So that's enough about that. But yeah, no, I'm super excited to hear the record whenever it comes out. You know, very, very excited. I have heard a lot about, you know, you speaking a little bit about it, and I think fans are really going to enjoy it. I'm not going to keep you too much longer, because I know we've been on here for almost an hour now, but at the end of every single one of my interviews, I ask the same 5 questions, and they're pretty basic, but it's just a fun way for my guests to kind of get a little bit more, you know, in depth about you and maybe like who you are as a person. So the first question is, if you weren't working in the profession that you're currently in, so, you know, you've been a singer, you've been a songwriter for many years, but, you know, if you weren't doing that, you know, what do you think that you would be doing potentially? Sounds like Spinal Tap. Perhaps I would be selling haberdashery or something. You know, how would you like that hat? You know? No, you know, you think about this. I don't think I had a choice. I often think about it. Yeah, I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. I wanted to be, you know, this and that. I mean, maybe I would be a novelist or something, a writer of some sort. I wanted to be a priest, believe it or not, when I was like 6, because I was mesmerized by the pomp and circumstance of the Mass and back then when the way it was served and all the Latins, and I studied Latin 15 years and all this stuff. So it's kind of crazy. But now I realized I don't think I had a choice, and I think because I didn't have a choice, I had to do it. I had to make something out of it. My mom always used to say, well, you need to fall back on something. So that's why you need to go to school. And I got an English literature degree and all this other stuff, and but I told her I wasn't going to fall back. I'd fall on my face arrogantly. And she said, well, that's what you need to be in the rock business. So maybe you'll do okay. But seriously, I don't know what I could do other than, I could do a lot of things. I'm an intelligent person, but I would never want to. I think I'd live in hell. And that's good. This is also for anybody that wants to do this. You have to follow your dream. You have to live your dream. You got to do hell or high water. You got to do this. And you got to do what it takes. You got to have what it takes. And you better learn what it takes in order to do it. Because this is what you are. This is who you are. This is who I am. Yeah. Rated X song.
And I think it's fate too, kind of like fate playing out and destiny and everything like that, and kind of end up exactly where you're supposed to be. And for you, that was, of course, behind the mic, singing and songwriting. So,
well, you can create your own fate. Destiny is in your hands. It's what you choose. Life is a series of decisions. That's all it is. One decision after the next. And if you decide, look, I had buddies of mine who, their father said, oh, you'll never make it. You have to go become an accountant, or you have to become a CEO of a company. In fact, my best friend was CEO of a record company. And we worked together at some for 30 years or whatever it was. He was more along that line. He wasn't the drummer anymore. Right. He was the brain, an executive. Great. So whatever it is, you got to follow your path. You got to follow your heart. It really is true. I don't want to sound like it's a Hallmark card or anything, or some kind of, cliche word, but it's true. If you don't, you'll be unhappy the rest of your life. Yeah. It's not about fame and it's not about fortune. It really isn't. Because happiness, if you live as long as I have, happiness is doing what you love to do. And you do what you love and love what you do. You never work a day in your life.
That's the saying, and it's 100% true. The second question I have for you is, what is something you wish everybody knew about you? Whether that's like a secret talent you have, is there an artist you listen to that nobody really would think that you listen to, music wise, something along those lines?
Probably all of the above that. I'm very eclectic when it comes to music and subjects and things like that. But I think maybe it's that something more personal. I think I'm a pretty reasonable, down-to-earth guy, coming from Jersey, and being one of the boys and all that stuff, and sometimes in the past, in the press, I was painted as a diva and hard to get along with and things, and I'm not at all. You piss me off, I will be. Oh yeah. Then the raging bull will come out. But other than that, I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm amenable, and I'm not looking for a fight, but I'll certainly finish it if I have to. So I think that's an important characteristic of personality that people should know. I'm really not that much of, what they used to paint me as. But then again, I was pretty cocky in those days. You start to mellow as you get older. But I think, I used to play the accordion. That's one thing.
Oh, wow, really? I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. But Sydney, it was a very unsexy instrument. I was playing when I was about 6, 7 years old. I had a mini Galenti, and I was playing all the pa stuff, and then the Beatles came out, and I went, oh no, I can't be playing this. And that's when my dad brought home a guitar, and that was it. I learned how to play on my own. Speaking of guitarists, I'd like to get into something about Leslie just for a little bit. But
yeah. That was something I wanted to bring up. We kind of got into other conversation, but I know that he did pass away just the end of last year, and something that I never knew until I saw your post about it. I know that you guys did perform together a couple of times, but I never really knew that you guys were such close friends. So if you want to speak a little bit about, just what your relationship was like, musically and personally.
Well, he was from Hackensack, New Jersey, Yngwie Malmsteen. He lived on top of the hill. I lived down the hill. He was older than me and much better than me, and he would mentor me on guitar because I'm a guitarist primarily. I started on guitar, but it's a good thing that I can sing because there's so many incredible guitarists out there nowadays. But Leslie was an icon. I loved his singing. He was an inspiration. guitar playing inspiration. He was a character. He was funny. He was rude. He was straightforward. He was honest to a fault, brutally honest. I loved the guy. He was also such a, how would you just say, he was a pure character, you know. As big as he was, that's how much you could love him, you know. And I knew Leslie from, we played in New Jersey, New York clubs together, jamming together, did recordings. He did Mississippi Queen on a project I did for Japan called Undercover, which was different cover songs. And I did Mississippi Queen as it's an iconic song. And Leslie, you know, can you come over and play lead? And I had to actually sing the lead to him. He was like, oh, come on, man, you know. I'm like, it was hysterical. And one day, I got to tell you a funny story because he wanted me to sing on one of his albums. I think it was As Fat as It Gets. So he calls me up one night and he says, evening actually, and he says, I want you to sing on the record. So I said, sure. And I'm looking at my calendar and I'm saying, okay, let me see. Well, I'm free over here. So on Saturday, he goes, Saturday? I says, well, when do you want to do this? He goes, now. This is actually what he said, now. So I went, now? It's like 7 o'clock. I'm going to eat. I got, you know, what? I got a shower. What are you kidding? He goes, can you make it? Come on. So I did it. And it's a song called The Cell on As Fat as It Gets. Anyway, I mean, one of the important things was I was with him in Hawaii. We used to do a thing called Voices of Classic Rock. And I was with him in Hawaii when he actually cut his toe. And he was a serious diabetic. And that toe was the start of the whole amputation.
Right.
And I saw him through the years, you know, just little by little deteriorating with that until he finally had it amputated. And the upshot of that was we did a show, which is on video, on YouTube, in Milan. That was his first show with the amputation. And I was playing guitar and singing with him. And it was just joyous. And he was just as good as ever and just as funny as ever and as Leslie as ever. And I miss him dearly. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it with the RIPs and all, but, you know, we were close. He's one of the greatest. I mean, just one of the greatest. I'll never forget seeing him at Mountain at the Fillmore and changed my life.
I mean, he influenced, you look back on it, I mean, he influenced almost everybody that came after him, you know what I mean? It's Mississippi Queen, I mean, I'm using that song specifically because that was one of, you know, his biggest songs, but I mean, that song was, everybody knows that song, you know, even if you weren't a rock and roll fan, you know that song.
That's right.
I mean, it's, you know, seeing kind of all the tributes rolling and everything and just, you know, hearing how much he inspired other musicians, you know what I mean? And, you know, I love that story of, you know, you guys playing, because I have seen that performance. And I know you guys have played together before, so it was nice. I did want to touch on him for sure. So. Well,
thank you, because I want to give him some accolades in memoriam. I mean, he was the greatest. Yeah. And he touched everybody from Eddie, God bless Eddie. He touched everybody. You name it. You know, Zach, you name the guitar player, he touched everybody. He was the daddy. Wonderful guy besides. So rest in peace. Anyway, yeah, so your 5 questions. What was number 3?
Yeah, so number 3, it's a little bit of a kind of a stereotypical question of everybody asks this one. But if you were stranded on a desert island and you only had 3 records, only 3 to bring with you to listen to, what do you think they would be, just off the top of your head?
The old stranded on the island question. Well, let's keep it in the rock genre. Okay, I mean, I'm going to keep it in the rock genre. The first one would be Machine Head. Second one would be the first Led Zeppelin album. And the third one would be Axis Bold as Love by Jimi Hendrix, which I did my English literature thesis on that album.
Wow, really?
Yeah, really, lyrically.
That's amazing.
About the auras, about interplanetary visitations, about everything. Just check that album out, Axis Bold as Love.
Yeah.
Hendrix was definitely touched. He knew things. He was not from this planet at all. So I had a very progressive professor, and she said, you can do your thesis on anything you want to do. So I said, can I do it on an album? She says, you mean like Bob Dylan or somebody? And I went, well, kind of. But because Bob Dylan knew that All Along the Watchtower was always Jimmy's song. In the museum, he has a plaque, and he actually says that. But anyway, I said, okay, so I brought in Axis Bold as Love, and I aced it, because, I mean, it's a very deep literature there. you know.
Writing something that you were passionate about too must have also made it all the better for you.
Absolutely. You have to be passionate about it. You know, when
Yeah.
when people walk around, well, I don't know what to think. What do you mean? You got to feel something. Otherwise, it's going to come out like crap.
Right.
Really. You got to want to do it.
People struggle on that question. You did it pretty fast, so you might have been the fastest person to answer those. So
Because it's real obvious. Machine Head was the record I practiced every day. You know, copying Galen, copying Blackmore, copying the sound. We played in a local band called Ezra. That was Deep Purple type cover originals, like Deep Purple, you know, in the same style and stuff, and a lot of Deep Purple. So of course Led Zepp. Come on, I saw him 6 times and never disappointed. Just the epitome of rock and roll.
yeah, I mean, Deep Purple being one of your albums, I mean, it must have been surreal for you as a fan who, you know, kind of growing up and listening to that to one day, you know, doing a record. I mean, not only did you do Deep Purple, but you were in Rainbow with Richie. So that must have been a kind of like, holy crap moment when that happened, kind of hearing that, how influential that was.
Yeah, totally. Look, this was pinch me, I'm dreaming, you know, honest to God. You know, when I got the call from Blackmore and Rainbow, I thought it was like, oh my God, you know.
Right.
First, I thought it was BS, but it turned out to be real. And then when they called for Purple, I just went, can this be happening? And it's really funny because at that point, I was on top of my game, and I was rehearsing with Foreigner because Graham had left this is true. Graham had left for a little while. And I went up New York, Manhattan into the loft, and we started rehearsing around the Say You Will album, Say You Will.
Gotcha.
And whatever album that single was on was during that time. And then Lou came back like a week or 2 later, and then Rick Wills called me up and said, look, Bad Company's looking for a singer. And at that moment, I got the call from Colin Hart, who was also tour manager for Deep Purple. And he said, we'd like you to come and audition. So it was like, huh? Yeah, talk about a story and a half.
Wow.
So I think I made the right choice, only because Purple was my dream band. You know, biggest inspiration. I'm very proud and honored to have been with those guys, especially in that configuration. Right. You know, hell of a career.
The fourth question I have is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self if you could?
My younger self. Well, the first thing I would say is fail up. In other words, people are afraid to fail. Without failure, you don't learn anything. My father, God bless him, always said, man who doesn't make a mistake makes nothing. Got to make mistakes, but you got to learn from them. The Stoics, Roman Stoics, Greek Stoics, I'm going into some literature here, but they always say that failure is the essence of success, because without the failure, you don't really achieve anything. In other words, most people are really afraid to fail. That's why they don't do anything. And really, the failure is in not doing it, not in doing it and failing, and doing it again and failing, and doing it again until finally you're knocking at that door loud enough where somebody opens it and says, okay, you made it. Come on, you know, fail up, don't fail down. So that's what I wish I knew earlier, but thankfully I had some very good guidance, especially from my dad, who was kind of a singer himself. So he said, if this is your dream, I'll support you, you know, but go to school because your mom says you got to go to school and get good grades. Moms are like that, you know. And I failed up, you know. Every time I would fall down, I'd get back up, because he always told me it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get back up. It's the old Rocky theory. Never had me down, Ray. You never had me down. You know?
Yeah, I know all about that. I'm in Philly, so it's like the Rocky capital. So I know all about the.
Hey, yo, Sydney, there you go. That's it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you want to go on a date, like maybe, you know, like a guy like me. Yeah, that's it. It's Rocky. So that's what I would tell myself again and again. I still keep telling myself, because that's the greatest advice you can give anybody for anything. Just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Everybody wants to make it on the first try, and they think that they're going to be an expert and to be, you know, that they can skip the beginning stages and they don't have to work really hard. And as long as they, you know, want it the first try, it's going to happen. And
no way.
A lot of people try and then they fail and they're like, oh, I hate failing. I'm never doing that again. But like you said, it's getting back up. You know, a lot of people don't do that. They just go, I hate failing. It felt like shit. Now I don't want to do it anymore.
We had 3 record companies pass on Fandango. We had we were being passed all the time. As we call it, pass means we don't want you, pass,
Right.
So we were pass until finally RCA heard what, in fact, to this day, Neil Portner, he is the president of the Grammys. He was a vice president at RCA. He's the one who heard it, said, hey, you guys got something. And we did 4 albums, and we were only popular in Casper, Wyoming. It was like we were falling, kept failing and failing.
Right.
And I just stayed with it. I kept at it. And some of the guys became landscapers or whatever. God bless them. But one is a big AT&T executive and so on. But just shows the go yet. If you keep trying and never give up, never give in, you just got to break through that wall. I read something once that said fear is the greatest illusion of them all, because fear is self-made, and I'm afraid of a lot of things. Don't get me wrong. We all have fears, but you have to conquer your fears. That's what true courage is, conquering your fear, So just go for it, man. Go to hell and back and let God sort it out, because failure is a way to success.
And I love the saying too, that's kind of similar to that. It's like one of my mottos, if your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. You know what I mean? It's like, if it doesn't completely terrify you and make you nervous, and you know what I mean, then you're not dreaming big enough. You got to get bigger. So I completely agree with those.
I like that. Yeah. I like it. I'm going to use that. Your dreams must terrify you. That's true. Because if they don't, then you're dreaming small, or you're not dreaming at all.
Exactly. It has to excite you, but also make you nervous, because then, it's, again, that goes back to that fear is a self-made thing. We're all nervous to fail. We're all nervous to, do something and not be good at it. But, it's kind of the name of the game. So
I'm nervous to this day. It's called healthy nervous.
Yes.
What are you nervous about? They say you're nervous before you go out on stage. Of course you're nervous. You want to be nervous. Why? Because you want to do a good job.
It means you care. It means you care when you're nervous.
You're still not taking it like, I'm the greatest, not at all. You're going out there every night like it's your first night, or making a record. You're going out there, what are they going to think? And this, of course, you want approval, but you don't live by approval.
Right.
You cannot possibly live by approval. You have to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And if other people pick up on it, great. But other than that, because it doesn't ring true, it won't ring true if it's not coming from you.
Right.
And that's really what makes success. Success is, as you get older, I start to realize success is really very simple. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need a lot of friends. You don't need big cars. I had all that at one point, and it's much simpler life. A simple man, Leonard Skinner, be a simple man.
Yeah.
So there's some philosophy we've been going through.
So the last question I have for you is a little less serious. It's kind of fun. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Any superpower at all?
Yep. Anything that you could think of.
I would like to have the power to heal people, no matter what it is, it's person, because I think that's the greatest power of all. I think it's Christ-like, and it's kind of like incredible power to be able to take some cancerous thing out of somebody, or to, I think that's the greatest power. I don't want to fly or any of this, or I don't want to have the strength of 10,000, but to heal. And sometimes if we're lucky, we heal with the music. That's a way of healing too. So, but it would be nice to just go zap, and heal somebody.
Yeah, a lot of people pick flying. It's like the big answer. Everyone's like, oh, come on, something a little bit more original.
Where would you go? And I can fly over there. I can drive in an hour and a half. No problem.
Yeah, I can walk. I could climb. Well, wow, this was such a great conversation. I am so happy that you took the time to join me. As I mentioned, I've greatly admired your talent for many years in my times listening to music. So I appreciate you taking the time, and thank Maya as well, because she really went above and beyond in helping me set this up, and I really appreciate it.
She goes above and beyond on everything. She's just super fantastic. So, and I'm sure she's thanking you as well, because for an intelligent, bright conversation with someone who is equally bright and conversational. And I will do it again. When the new album comes out, let's do it again.
Yeah, seriously. Whenever you want to talk, you are welcome on the podcast anytime. Just feel free to reach out.